I never thought I'd be standing at the edge of my property staring at a sign that read, "Welcome to Greenleaf Community Public Dog Park, HOA property." My heart raced as I clenched my coffee mug so tightly that I could feel my knuckles turning white. This was my land, the land my family had tended for generations. Somehow, while I was busy fixing up the back barn, some slick operators in the HOA had pulled off an underhanded play. A couple of dubious signatures, a forged plat map, and just like that, 12 acres of my ranch vanished into thin air. I took a deep breath, letting my anger simmer beneath the surface. As I surveyed the transformed expanse of what used to be my irrigation and grazing area, now leveled and decorated with dog waste bins, I grappled with the audacity of the HOA. They hadn't just encroached on my property. They'd strategically taken control of my water access, an unforgivable offense in my book. This was personal, and those affluent city folk were about to find out that you don't mess with a rancher. Retreating into my home, I pushed open the old filing cabinet my grandfather had maintained for decades until I found what I was searching for, the water rights document. My grandfather had signed an easement agreement back in 1971, allowing these so-called civilized folks access to our well for a nominal fee, and it was revocable with one simple form. I chuckled darkly to myself, easing back into a plan. They may have stolen the land, but they were about to learn that I controlled the lifeblood of this community, their water. Gathering my resolve, I marched back outside. This wasn't just a battle for land. It was a fight for dignity, for respect. I prepared myself for the chaotic showdown ahead because this story was about to unfold like a wildfire. As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, I worked on drafting the paperwork needed to revoke the easement. Every stroke of my pen felt like justice being served. As I signed the last line, I felt a surge of anticipation flood me. Tomorrow will be the dawn of the HOA's reality check. The gleaming dog park will become their worst nightmare. The next morning, I took a moment to appreciate the silence around my ranch before I seized control of the valve. It was time to cut off their water. I grabbed the tools I needed and prepared for the task ahead. The irrigation system that flowed underground was my ace in the hole, and I had no intention of playing nice anymore. As I flipped the switch and turned the water off, I imagined the chaos I was about to unleash. By sunrise, an entire neighborhood would wake up to dry faucets and empty sprinklers, and I silently reveled in the satisfaction that would soon fill me as I watched them scramble. Hours later, I stood on my porch with a fresh cup of coffee, waiting. The first confused residents trickled out, looking bewildered. I watched as they turned curiously toward the dog park, energy shifting as garden hoses were dragged about like limp noodles. I smiled to myself, knowing they'd soon realize just how vital that water was, the only thread tying them to their homes. And then, just like I'd written in my mind, she appeared. Cheryl, that sharp-nosed blonde with her clipboard and power chute, stormed past the happy dog owners to my property line, where I stood, an impenetrable rock. She knocked on my door like she owned the place. When I opened it, I found her fuming, her face flushed red. "You cut us off!" she yelled, her voice filled with indignation. "No," I countered, slipping my hands casually into my pockets. "I cut myself off from the water you've been stealing." She sputtered out protest after protest, claiming community rights and legal standings, but I remained unmoved. "You built that dog park on my land without permission. You violated our agreement. You don't get to claim what's mine." "What do you think will happen now?" she demanded, waving her arms wildly, as if trying to conjure sympathy from the air. "You'll regret this." "Looking forward to it," I said with a calmness that made her storm off, spluttering into her phone. As I closed the door, my heart pounded with adrenaline. This wasn't merely about water or land. This was about standing my ground against the entitled. I watched the chaos unfold as they scrambled to contact plumbers and find solutions, dozens of heads shaking in disbelief. But this was merely the beginning. The fight, I sensed, would carry on, with more twists and turns in the Texas road. And I was ready. As I closed the door on Cheryl's fuming face, the sound of confusion spilled from the direction of the dog park. I glanced out the window and felt a swell of satisfaction. The neighborhood was a frenzy. Homeowners were gathering in small clusters, expressions of disbelief etched across their faces as they turned their garden hoses this way and that, only to find them sputtering dry. No water. No respite from the dry Texas heat. The moment was almost euphoric, but deep within me, a flicker of anxiety twisted. This wasn't over. The HOA wouldn't back down so easily. I reached for the phone and dialed my lawyer, Maria Reyes. "Hank," she answered, her voice sharp with urgency. "I saw the water shut off on the news. What's your plan?" "Let them panic for now. I revoked their access to my well," I replied, "but I know they'll retaliate. Just stay vigilant, and don't let them provoke you." Her words echoed in my mind as I stepped outside onto the porch, the warm breeze tousling my hair. I took a deep breath, taking in the stillness settling over the ranch like a blanket. Then I heard it, a distant rumble, muffled but growing closer, the sound of an engine. It wasn't the usual hum of neighborly activity. No, this was more ominous. My instincts kicked in as I squinted into the distance, and soon enough I saw it, a truck, a big one, barreling down the dirt road toward my land. My heart raced as I caught sight of the familiar blue and white of the county sheriff's badge emblazoned on the side. I wasn't prepared for a confrontation, but I couldn't hide. The truck skidded to a stop, and out jumped Deputy Lopez, looking frantic. "Hank, we need to talk now." He rushed up the steps, and I could tell from his face that the news wasn't good. "What happened?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "It's the HOA. They are claiming you're violating city codes. They've filed an emergency injunction to force you to restore water access, and they're rounding up support in the community," he explained, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "They've got the mayor's ear, and if we don't act fast—" I swallowed hard, knowing there was no way they could twist the law against me with the documents I had. But their threats were real, and Cheryl had a knack for drumming up support when her back was against the wall. The intruders, sensing the tide had turned, scrambled to their feet and hurried to the door. Their escape was evident, but I was determined not to let them get away. Not so fast. I bellowed, lunging toward the second intruder mid-dash, grabbing him by the collar of his jacket and pulling him back down. But then I felt it, an explosion of heat behind me. My heart thundered as I turned to find flames spilling over from the electrical panel, the smell of smoke thick and choking. "The pump!" I gasped, yanking the gas can from the hands of the first intruder, who had been desperately trying to splash fuel into the growing inferno. In the confusion, the second intruder slammed against the wall and blocked my way to the exit. "You don't want to do this," I warned, my voice firm but wavering as I looked him directly in the eye. "We can end this now." "There's no ending this for you, old man." He spat, a mixture of fear and bravado. "The HOA owns this place now. You think they're going to let you keep fighting?" I shoved him backward, taking advantage of his hesitation, and I dove outside through the erupting flames, just as Lopez burst through the door, grabbing me by the arm and hauling me further away from the growing blaze. "That fire's going to consume the whole building," he shouted over the roar. "We need backup." I held my breath, glancing back as the flames danced wildly behind us, smoke billowing like a dark storm cloud. The pump house. I had no idea how much damage they had done, but I couldn't let them succeed. I had to ensure they didn't get any further. Suddenly, I heard a commotion behind me. Deputy Lopez's radio crackled to life. "All units, respond to Miller Acres. Possible arson in progress." I repeat, possible arson. With that, I kicked it into gear, running around the building to get a look at the commotion. My pulse quickened when I spotted the two intruders regrouping, frantically scanning the area for an escape route. They spotted me, and their faces turned pale. "Go!" the one with the crowbar shouted at the other, who flung his arm out toward the truck parked just outside, a dirty, old beast with the engine still rumbling. "Hey! Stop!" I shouted, but the words only fueled their panic. They jumped into the truck, and I sprinted after them as they fired up the engine and sped away. "No!" I yelled, but before I could catch up, they were peeling out into the distance. Breathless, I turned to Lopez, who was already radioing for backup. He shot me a pained expression and said, "We've got to get water on that fire now." "Right behind you," I replied, rushing in the direction of my barn, which housed a fire hydrant, hoping it still worked. More incriminating thoughts raced through my mind. I could feel the HOA turning this incident to their advantage, portraying me as a villain and themselves as the victims. As I reached the barn, I yanked on the freeze hose and set to work, directing water toward the blazing shed. The flames recoiled for a moment, but then roared back to life, weaving a mesmerizing dance that twisted and turned with the wind, taking its toll as it sought to destroy my legacy. "Hold it steady," Deputy Lopez shouted as he ran up behind me, dragging a second hose from a nearby hydrant. Together we fought the flames, a thick cloud of acrid smoke encasing us in its grip. But just as I thought we were starting to gain the upper hand, I heard an unmistakable sound. Siren wails echoed in the distance. "Finally!" I shouted, but then my focus shifted. From the corner of my eye, I spotted figures slipping through the tree line on the far side of the property, emerging from the shadows like phantoms. My heart sank when I recognized Cheryl standing amongst them, that smug look plastered on her face, leading the group with all the confidence of someone who believed they had the upper hand. "Look!" I yelled at Lopez over the din. "They're going to use this to spin the story. They're already plotting." "Just hold your ground," he shouted back, fighting the flames with renewed energy. As the air thickened with smoke and embers dance around us like fireflies, I could feel the chaos slipping beyond my control. Bursting into an all-out war fueled by spite and desperation, it wouldn't just end in flames. It would evolve real lives into collateral damage. And as the flames crackled and the emergency sirens drew closer, I understood. This hadn't just become a fight for water. It had transformed into a battle for survival against a reckless intent that could threaten everything I held dear. The flames roared higher, seeming to scream in defiance as if the very ranch were alive, fighting back against the bitter assault of arson. I pushed the hose with all my strength, feeling the cold water surge through the nozzle, but the flames didn't relent. They danced and leaped toward the rickety roof, threatening to engulf everything in their grasp. "Damn it!" Lopez shouted, positioning the second hose at an angle that aimed directly at a corner flame that threatened to leap toward the nearby barn. "They'll try to spread it to the other buildings." Just then, I caught a glimpse of movement. A shadow darted behind the barn. My heart raced as I pointed the hose at the row of trees lining the property, where I had just spotted one of Cheryl's hired hands, a wiry figure creeping closer. "Lopez, look out!" I shouted, but before he could react, the figure dashed toward the pump house, a gas canister in hand, the very one they had abandoned earlier. They are trying to burn it all down. I shouted, my voice hoarse from smoke and anger. Lopez plunged into motion, hurrying to intercept him. But the man was quicker, sauntering precariously close to the fires roaring above. I squeezed the hose tighter in frustration, but the water sprayed erratically. Focusing harder, I resolved to put out the section threatening to spread toward the barn. "Make sure he doesn't light that can," I yelled, my breath coming out in short bursts, panic clawing at my chest. But before Lopez could reach the intruder, another figure emerged, a woman, thriving in the chaos, her features indistinguishable with the shadows. In an instant, she swept the gas can from the hand of the first man, flinging it away like a pebble. It spilled everywhere, creating a trail burning hot enough to stain the earth around us. "Cheryl," I growled through gritted teeth, calling her out through the smoke and fire. The sound roared back like thunder, but I saw her profile clearly. She smirked knowingly, as if relishing the chaos before her. "Did you really think you could just shut us out, Hank?" she called, her voice cutting through the firelit air like a knife. "This is bigger than you. We're reclaiming what's ours." I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. "What's yours? You mean threatening my livelihood? My home?" She took one step closer, a controlled demeanor masking the anxiety beneath it, making me all the more cautious. "It will all be yours again, eventually, but you need to learn your lesson first." "Get the papers," I said, a cold vein of determination pumping through me. "I'll show you that I'm in the right." We rushed inside, frantically flipping through files, until I pulled out the easement revocation document. "Hey, they can't claim my water if they've stolen my land first. It's all right here." Deputy Lopez held the paper, brow furrowed, but then a glint of understanding sparked in his eyes. Before he could say more, my phone buzzed against the table. Maria's name flashed on the screen. "Talk to me," I said, urgency sharpening my tone. "Hank, we've got a problem. The HOA's filed a petition claiming you've made illegal alterations to public utility access. They are using your recent water shutoff as a leverage point. You need to prepare for a fight. That's ridiculous. I shouted, my frustration boiling over. They can't just dictate what I can do with my own property. Calm down, but you need solid evidence to counter their claims. The city's compliance office is coming to investigate. Investigation. I scoffed. This is my land. They can't take what's rightfully mine. Just then, I heard laughter outside, teasing, snide, like a pack of hyenas. I glanced out, and my blood ran cold. A dozen HOA members, including Cheryl, mirrored their usual entitlement, huddled in my once peaceful field, setting up a gathering. They're organizing a protest, Hank, Deputy Lopez said, his voice tight with unease. They want the whole neighborhood to back them against you. They can't do that. This is my property. I bolted for the door, a rush of adrenaline propelling me forward. Wait! Hank, don't just run out there. He grabbed my arm, but I shook him off. I'm not letting them bully me. I burst onto the porch, my presence looming over their gathering. Hey, folks! I shouted, silencing their chatter. Is this what you think you need to do? Storm my land like it's a free-for-all. Cheryl stepped forward, feigning bravado beneath a designer hat. We're here to reclaim what you've stolen from the community, Hank. Dare to show your face, and you'll be met with consequences. Consequences? You're the ones who've stolen from me. I have the documents right here. I snapped, brandishing the easement revocation. Laughter erupted again, the mocking kind. He thinks he can take us on, one man exclaimed, pointing at me like I was a bug on a shoe. Enough! I hollered, my voice digging deeper into their smugness. You think intimidation is going to work? Watch yourself. I've had enough of your games. Cheryl stepped closer, voice low. You've made a dangerous enemy, Hank. You won't win this fight. And with that, she stepped away, waving her hand in dismissal, as if I were nothing more than an annoyance. Fury ignited within me. Let's see who really loses, Cheryl. I shouted after her, the defiance of it energizing me. Lopez returned to my side, staring with wide eyes. Hank, this is escalating quickly. I know, but they've pushed all the wrong buttons. I'm not backing down, I muttered, watching as they began setting up chairs and banners, rallying the neighborhood around their false narrative. Before I could gather my thoughts, I felt my phone vibrate. It was a text from Maria. Asterisk, police report just came in. Someone is planning a strategic attack on your water system tonight. Asterisk. My heart dropped. Lopez! I almost shouted. We need to secure the pump house. Now! Together, we dashed toward the back of the ranch, where the old pump house stood, sheltering the very lifeline of my land. As we approached, the weight of something foreboding pressed down on us, like the calm before a storm. Glimmering in the twilight, I could see shadows flitting around the perimeter. My pulse quickened. Someone was out here, scheming. Stay low, Deputy Lopez whispered, reaching for his radio, the unmistakable tension in the air amplifying every sound. Just then, a figure darted past, bolting toward the pump house. Stop! I shouted, lunging after them. The figure stumbled, panic in their movements. But before I could even register a face, they yanked the door open. I sprang after them, adrenaline surging, determined to catch whoever dared try to sabotage my land. They scrambled inside, and as I burst through the door, there they were, two figures, shrouded in darkness, their silhouettes hunched over the control panel, trying to disable the system. Get away from there! I shouted as something cold gleamed in the dim light. The intruders froze, and I caught a glimpse of fire in their eyes. As I lunged forward, a harsh scream of metal filled the space as one lifted a crowbar high. Drop it! I yelled, adrenaline crashing over me like a wave as time slowed down. But before I could react, one of them threw a flash of something, a canister, and suddenly flames erupted, hissing like a demon from hell. I dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the fire, knowing this fight had escalated far beyond anything I'd anticipated. It was a fight for more than just water. Now it felt like my life was on the line. The flames roared, licking at the edges of the pump house, their heat radiating as I dove for cover behind a stack of old hay bales. My heart raced furiously in my chest while I scanned the chaotic scene. The two intruders had been thrown into a frenzied panic, darting between shadows, desperately trying to keep the fire contained while clearly losing their grip on the situation. "Get out! Get out!" one of them shouted, the terror evident in his voice as smoke began curling up toward the rafters. "Shut the valve! Quick!" The other yelled back, scrabbling to the insulation panel, sweat glistening on his brow. My mind raced. They intended to destroy my water system and everything it supported. I couldn't let that happen. Why don't you just give up? I barked at them, standing tall despite the heat. "You're only digging your own graves." Both figures froze. I could see their faces, illuminated by the flickering flames, sweaty, desperate, and fear-stricken. One wore a streak of soot across his cheek, and the other's eyes darted wildly as he balanced on the edge with a half-filled gaskin in hand. "Stay back!" The one holding the crowbar shouted, feebly lifting it higher as if it were an effective weapon. "Oh, what?" I challenged, narrowing my eyes. He swung the crowbar at me, and I ducked just in time, the metal slicing thin air as I sidestepped, adrenaline surging through me. Without thinking, I lunged forward, tackling the closest figure. The two of us collided hard, and we tumbled to the ground. Miscalculations put me at an advantage. My years of working on the ranch wrestling cattle and repairing fences had put me in prime condition. I grappled for control, shoving him backward, away from the flames and toward the door. He stumbled, knocking over a container of gasoline, and suddenly it seemed the entire room was igniting under the growing chaos. "Call the cops!" I screamed at Deputy Lopez, still hunkered near the entrance, watching the scene unfold as if static in time. "Yes, now," he yelled back, diving for his radio. As I tightened my grip on the hose, ready to spray at the flames again, I sensed movement under my feet. I glanced down in confusion as the ground trembled, the very earth shifting. A soft rumble echoed forth, louder now, punctuating the air as if something deep beneath the surface stirred. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed. The wind shifted, carrying with it a new scent, the smell of something burning deeper. "Lopez!" I shouted, the realization dawning. "That's not just a fire. It's the whole land." He turned, his eyes wide, a revelation hitting him too. The well, if they hit the line, it'll compromise the ground. Behind us, the haphazard arrangement of flames ignited a volatile reaction, and within moments, a violent explosion erupted from our very feet. Chaparral and dirt flew, sending debris spiraling into the sky as though nature took offense to what we had let fester. I was thrown off my feet and rolled away as the ground buckled and heaved. Smoke and dust enveloped us, making the scene seem like a battlefield, chaos reigning among the cries of alarm. In the midst of the uproar, I felt an ethereal whisper flutter through my mind, sinking deeper, revealing secrets of the land I had tethered myself to. "Protect what's yours," it urged. "You are the guardian." Clarity surged through me as I stumbled to my feet, watching the aftermath of the disaster. I could see Cheryl and her friends trying to flee, horrified at the sight of nature's wrath. But it was only the beginning. I sprinted toward the surviving ridge, fueled by a newfound purpose. "Lopez, grab a hose. We've got to save the barn." The fire was partially under control now. The support beams crackled ominously, and the canopy above started to sway dangerously. I turned back toward the barn just in time to see Cheryl's shadow, slipping between the trees, a cowardly combination of intrigue and fear, the fire reflecting in her eyes. Rage knitted my brow, but there wasn't time. My attention turned to the barn, where embers peppered the lower walls, and the flames' greedy tongues reached hungrily for the wooden structure. "No, no, no!" I shouted, racing forward with Lopez behind me. We sprayed the barn's side relentlessly, forcing the flames back wherever they dared encroach. The world was hazy as the smoke thickened and obscured my vision. Suddenly, I thought I caught sight of something glinting through the dust, a shadow let loose, desperately aiming toward the field. "Lopez!" I yelled, heart racing with the idea that this was my moment. "Keep spraying." I bolted toward the trees, adrenaline coursing as I pushed through the shrubbery, searching for the figure that had dared to find me one last time. And there she was, Cheryl, hunched over near the hidden well opening, frantically working to undo the iron latch, her eyes wild with desperation. With every ounce of energy I had, I barreled forward, tackling her before she could release the cap. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded, scrambling to pin her down. She struggled, but the blaze behind us grew louder, more chaotic. "Let me go. This land is mine," she hissed, eyes wild with fury. "No, it's not just yours." I grappled with her, sensing the faintest tremors then, followed by the ground rumbling once again, the well's ancient power awakening, twisting beneath us like a serpent. Suddenly, with one final push, I managed to slam the iron lid shut. "You've got no right to harness this for your gain. Let's see who really loses." In that moment, we were blinded by an intense light. The energy from below surged, sending a shockwave swirling around us. Water erupted from the well, bursting forth like an unforeseen geyser, while the ground shook violently beneath us. The water surged, not to drown, but to obliterate. It flowed in currents, powerful enough to extinguish the fires, to soak the earth and reverberate like a message sent through the very veins of the land. Cheryl and her conspirators scrambled back, eyes wide in shock. I stood tall, heart hammering, the significance washing over me. Power flowed through me, through the warm soil that had sustained my family for generations. The legacy of this land was mine to protect. As the flames receded and the well returned to calmness, I felt a shift in the air. I was not just a survivor. I was a guardian. I turned to face the chaos behind me, as a wave of embers gave their final salute, flickering out against the night. With a sense of finality, I looked back at Cheryl, who stood frozen in awe of the spectacle, a frown etched deeply, realization dawning that everything she did would fall short against what had been awakened. "You'll move, Cheryl," I said, my voice steady with resolve. "Let's see if those community ties can save you now." And just like that, within the whirlwind of fury and power, I knew this battle was only the beginning. The land was alive, blessing the rightful protector with secrets untold, and I was determined to wield that power against any who dared challenge the heart of this place. The night promised more than mere survival. This land would speak, and I would listen.